Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a pretty fascinating question. What actually transforms a city into a truly great, thriving sports hub? I mean, is it the people screaming in the stands? Is it the star players on a field? Or is it actually the executives sitting up in the boardroom? Well, we're going to take a journey today, starting all the way down at the micro level with the fans and zooming all the way out to the macro level of business to unpack the anatomy of a sports city and find out exactly what makes them tick.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've got 4 stops on our tour today. 1. The heartbeat of the fans. 2. The triangle of hatred. 3. The rise of new fandom. And 4. The business of sports. All right, starting us off with Section 1, the heartbeat of the fans, focusing on that deep-rooted passion.
So, what actually creates a diehard fan in the first place? We're talking about those incredibly deep, generational bonds that fans share with their teams in legendary sports towns, places like St. Louis or Philadelphia. It's a phenomenon that goes way, way beyond just catching a game on a random Tuesday night. Take a city like St. Louis. The Cardinals are so deeply steeped in local tradition and history that the franchise is treated almost like a religion. The reverence is so intense there that people joke the players might as well bow to the statue of Stan Musial before every home game. But honestly, it's that exact level of historical integration that makes a fanbase truly diehard. The team literally becomes a living, breathing timeline of the city itself. And this connection, it is profoundly emotional. Just listen to this quote from Alexandria Mansfield. She's a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and she was sobbing when they finally won the Super Bowl. She said, "I know he would have been so happy to see that." See, she had been watching the playoff run from a hospital room with her late father. So when the Eagles ultimately took home the trophy, that victory wasn't just about football, right? It was this incredibly profound moment of grief and memory and love. It really grounds the abstract idea of sports fandom into very real human emotion. You aren't just cheering for a piece of laundry with a logo on it. You are cheering for the memories tied to the people you love.
So, the crucial point to take away here is that in places like Philadelphia, sports are fundamentally baked into their blue-collar identity. It's this deep-rooted generational passion. When a city goes through hard times, sometimes the success of their local team is the only bit of glory the community can collectively celebrate. And that shared emotional investment, it creates this infectious energy that just unites everyone. It gives people something to believe in, lifting them up when things are great and comforting them when they're grieving.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, we're calling this one the Triangle of Hatred, looking at Boston, New York, and Philly. So what is this triangle of hatred? Well, it refers to the notoriously storied and wildly rancorous sports rivalries shared among Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. Because these 3 cities are so geographically close to one another, and frankly, so incredibly proud of their own cultures, their teams have been locked in a perpetual, 3-way clash for decades. It's a rivalry steeped in a long history of spectacular highlights and absolute crushing heartbreak. We're looking objectively at a dynamic where, honestly, the suffering of a rival city is often celebrated just as hard as a hometown championship. And this brilliantly illustrates just how deep this regional malice goes. It literally defines entire eras of sports. Back in 1918, the Boston Red Sox famously sold Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees, launching the infamous 86-year curse of the Bambino and establishing what is arguably baseball's greatest feud. Then jump to the 1960s, you've got the ultimate basketball heavyweight clash, Boston's Bill Russell versus Philly's Wilt Chamberlain. Fast forward to 2008, the New York Giants pull off an absolute miracle Super Bowl upset over the undefeated New England Patriots. And then exactly 10 years later, in 2018, it's Philly's turn to take down the mighty Patriots with the now legendary Philly Special. These aren't just games on a schedule. These are mythical conflicts that define whole generations. But it isn't always about the championships. Sometimes individual, fleeting moments form this punctuated equilibrium of malice that fans never, ever forget. Take the 2010 Miracle at the Meadowlands. Philadelphia's Deshaun Jackson fumbles a punt with just 14 seconds left on the clock. It looks like it's over, but he recovers it and runs it all the way back for a game-winning touchdown against the Giants. Even though the Eagles didn't go on to win the Super Bowl that year, to the fans, it completely didn't matter. They got to permanently stick it to a fierce regional rival in the most dramatic, heartbreaking way possible. Let's shift gears to Section 3, the rise of new fandom, taking a trip over to the Pacific Northwest. For the longest time, the traditional playbook for Major League Soccer heavily targeted families. You probably know the vibe, the classic image of soccer moms with minivans bringing orange slices to halftime. But the Pacific Northwest, a region famous for grunge music and Starbucks, completely flipped the script. Their new supporter looks totally different.
We're talking about young, urban, tech-savvy professionals in their 20s and 30s who are just flocking to see teams like the Seattle Sounders and Portland Timbers. They took MLS and made it undeniably cool. Now, what's really interesting about this is the atmosphere they've built. They've essentially cultivated an intensely European game day vibe right here in the US. It all kicks off with a robust pub culture, marching to the stadium together, singing continuous, unified chants, and organizing these massive, highly coordinated visual displays called TIFOs. Supporter groups like the Timbers Army in Portland and the Emerald City Supporters in Seattle, they don't just sit back and watch the game. They are an active, highly organized part of the matchday experience, creating a massive sense of community for people from all walks of life. And the numbers prove just how wildly successful this strategy was. 36,000. That's how many fans packed into Quest Field for the very first MLS match between the Seattle Sounders and the expansion Portland Timbers. By intentionally appealing directly to that young, urban demographic, instead of just relying on youth soccer leagues, these Pacific Northwest cities built a sustainable, rabid fan base that genuinely rivals the major traditional American sports. Let's move to our final stop and see how this builds up to the macro level in Section 4, the business of sports and how it fuels all this passion. Because, let's be real, behind all the face paint, the cheering, and the passion, there is a massive billion-dollar infrastructure. A thriving sports city actually requires a ton of financial fuel. Just look at Atlanta. Their sports ecosystem is deeply, deeply integrated with colossal corporate partners headquartered right in their own backyard. We're talking about global titans like Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, and the Home Depot. That level of heavy-hitting corporate backing is exactly what allows a city to fund world-class stadiums, host mega events, and sustain multiple pro franchises across the NFL, NBA, MLS, and MLS. And this dynamic is perfectly captured in the Sports Business Journal's 2026 rankings of the best sports business cities in the U.S. It's fascinating because each city leverages a totally unique attribute. Atlanta takes that #1 spot thanks to that incredible corporate base, which is talked about. But New York City comes in at #2, driven purely by sheer construction volume. Then you have Indianapolis at 3, acting as a massive centralized pipeline for NCAA and NFL events. Charlotte is climbing fast at #4 because of rapid population growth. And Minneapolis-St. Paul rounds out the top 5 by anchoring its market with state-of-the-art premier facilities. To really put the scale of this industry into perspective, let this number sink in for a second. $4.1 billion. That is the unmatched, staggering amount of money New York City has poured specifically into sports construction costs just since 2018 alone. It really underscores the data-driven reality of modern sports. Fan passion is absolutely essential, sure, but it literally takes billions of dollars in real estate, construction, and infrastructure to build the modern arenas required to house all that passion. So what does this all mean for us? It leaves us with a pretty provocative question to end our explainer today. Are fans or funds the true engine of sports? I mean, we've seen the tears of a grieving daughter in Philly, the generational hatred between historic East Coast rivals, and the pub-chanting diehard communities of the Pacific Northwest. But we've also seen billions of dollars flowing from corporate titans in Atlanta and massive real estate development in New York. Perhaps a true sports city is simply that rare, magical place where the emotional heartbeat of the fans perfectly aligns with the financial pulse of the boardroom. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this leaves you looking at your own home team in a whole new light.